Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters, your Magic the Gathering source that helps you command your budget. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Commander's Quarters studio. Welcome to the show. So obviously when a new set like Kamigawa Neon Dynasty comes out, it takes some time for the cards within that set to actually find their real market value. When you see cards that are immediately posted, after a card is spoiled, the card prices seem to be a bit high. Now, sometimes they are lower, but they end up going higher. Regardless, new card pricing is interesting. What is also interesting, though, is how a new set and the cards from it can help impact the prices of old cards, and sometimes the amount that they affect the prices of old cards is absolutely absurd. And a fantastic way to see that kind of pricing impact is on a website called mtgstocks.com, which is a great resource. And as you see on this episode, this website is great at breaking down the price trends of certain cards, and it's really going to help me illustrate just how incredible the impact of some things from Kamigawa were. Now, obviously, since my format is Commander, I am very interested to see how new Commanders, once they are spoiled or once they come out, actually impact the prices of certain cards. And as you can see from the Kamigawa Neon Dynasty Commanders, of which there were 32 of them, there are some that are already incredibly popular, like Ishin, Satoru Umazawa, Hinata, Tetsunari, etc, etc, etc. I mean, even with Ishin, look, there are 2,274 decks already for Ishin as of today, so yeah, that is a lot of demand for, not only some newer cards, but also some potentially older cards or cards that, didn't have a big print run, and because of that, certain cards spike in price when a lot of players want to play with a brand new commander. Now, of course, there are actually even more commanders in this set. Well, not the set technically, but because of the commander precons, we also had 12 more commanders, like, Goshintai of Life's Origin, Shorakai Genesis Engine, Chishiro, the Shattered Blade, etc, etc, etc. And again, the more popular a commander is, the more in demand certain cards are going to be for it. So now let's jump into some of these commanders from the set and the precons and talk about what cards really spiked in price because of them. First up, we've got Ishin, Two Heavens is One, and as already mentioned, this is a very popular commander already with already 2,000 decks to its name. It's a 3/4 human samurai for red, white, black, and it says if a creature attacking causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers initial time. So essentially, this is the ultimate attack harmonicon commander. It not only counts whenever you have an attack trigger, but also when your opponents have attack triggers as well. It's one of the very few 3-color commanders from the set, and yeah, there are a lot of powerful things that you can do with it, and there are a lot of players out there, obviously, that are really excited about this one. And one of the cards that is very popular in this commander deck, seeing play in 51% of the decks on EDH Rec for Ishin, is Hero of Bladehold. It's a 3/4 human knight that costs 2 white and has Battle Cry, so whenever it attacks, each other attacking creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. On top of that, whenever it attacks, you get 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. So Ishin doubles up both of these attack triggers, which is obviously very impactful. Each of your other attacking creatures are going to get +2/+0, and when this attacks, you are getting 4 1/1 white soldier creature tokens on the battlefield, tapped and attacking as well. Now on mtgstocks.com, we can actually see the price impact that Ishin had on this card. Before Kamigawa Neon Dynasty came out back in January, this was about a $7 or $8 card, which is, still well out of my budget range, but, nowhere near as expensive as it is now, because the average price is $22 and the market price is $18.58. And yeah, that market price seems to be steadily climbing still. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's pretty incredible to see just how a single commander that is spoiled can have an impact on a card this large. I mean, it, pretty much, tripled its price, essentially? But this is, of course, nowhere near the biggest example. Because now let's move on to Fervent Charge, an enchantment for 1 white, black, red. It says, whenever a creature you control attacks, it gets +2/+2 until end of turn. So obviously this 4 mana enchantment in an Ishin deck is absolutely incredible. With this in play, whenever any of your creatures attack, they are getting +4/+4 until end of turn. And the price of this card has absolutely skyrocketed ever since Ishin was spoiled. Back in January, this was like a 70-cent card. Obviously, its price today is nowhere near that, with its price being around $19 or $20. And for those of you wondering what the difference is between average and market price, and please correct me below in the comments if I'm wrong on this, market price, I believe, is basically based on most recent sales data for cards, so what cards are actually selling for. Whereas average is the median price for past listings. Regardless, however you look at it, this card went from like a $1 card to a $20 card. And actually, just by checking out this card on Scryfall, we can see one of the reasons for that, and well, there's actually only one printing of this card, which was from Apocalypse. So there really probably aren't all that many out there, and yeah, again, with a commander like Ishin having a high demand, the card got quite expensive quite quickly. So actually, one of the reasons I found all this pricing data quite interesting is that, well, if you see a commander that you're really excited about from a new set, and you're like, oh, I might want to build around that one, if you find certain cards that meet certain criteria like this one that would work really well with the commander and maybe it doesn't have any reprints or, you know, it's got a very limited print run and whatever reprints it had, you might want to jump on certain cards earlier rather than later. And actually, not to toot my own horn, but there were certain cards that I highlighted in some of my quick takes that did jump in price quite a bit. Now let's get this clear, I'm not saying that they jumped in price because I highlighted them in my quick takes, but I am saying that, well, if a card is going to work well with a commander and you know you want to build around that commander and you know that card maybe doesn't have, you know, all that many printings or various other factors, again, you might want to consider going for that card earlier rather than later. Because again, if the second that Ishin was spoiled, you knew you wanted to build an Ishin deck and you see Fervent Charge is, you know, $1 or $2, well, that card jumped, you know, to a $21 card pretty quickly. Regardless, now let's move on to some other commanders and the cards that they spiked in price. Next up, another very popular commander, this one from the Commander Precons. Okay, not actually from the Commander Precons, but from the set boosters, Goshintai of Life's Origin. It's a 3/4 legendary enchantment creature shrine that costs 3 and a green, and it has pay Wooburg, tap, return target enchantment card from your graveyard to the battlefield, but more importantly, it has whenever Goshintai of Life's Origin or another non-token shrine enters the battlefield under your control, create a 1/1 color shrine enchantment creature token. So this is the shrine commander that many players have been waiting for, and actually really quick about that shrine token, if you haven't seen my episode on it, make sure you check it out because, yeah, that token is quite expensive these days because of a printing error. Regardless, back to this episode, yeah, this is the shrine commander that many players have been waiting for, and because of that, well, shrines, of course, went up in price a ton. So, of course, the first one that I'm going to highlight is Sanctum of All, that Wooburg shrine that says at the beginning of your upkeep, you may search your library and or graveyard for a shrine card and put it on the battlefield. If you search your library this way, shuffle it. And, of course, if an ability of another shrine you control triggers while you control 6 or more shrines, that ability triggers initial time. Again, this commander easily helps you increase the number of shrines that you have in play, so you can make your shrines even more impactful, and also, obviously, with Sanctum of All, you can easily get to that 6 shrine requirement. With that upkeep trigger, you go get a shrine, and not only do you get that shrine into play, but again, once that comes into play, Goshintai triggers, and you get a shrine token too. So essentially, 2 shrines for the price of 1. But speaking of price, we can see that the price of this card clearly went up quite a bit ever since Goshintai of Life's Origin was spoiled. This was a 60 or so cent card. In fact, again, this was so budget at one point that I was able to include it in one of my own decks, but now it is out of my budget restriction of less than $1 because it is now on average $4.13 and its market price is $3.76. But of course, this is not the shrine with the biggest increase. Another one of the M21 shrines that did jump in price was Sanctum of Stone Fangs, a legendary enchantment shrine for 1 and a black, and it says at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, each opponent loses X life and you gain X life for X number of shrines you control. Again, previously, this one was pretty limited to how much you could drain your opponents. I mean, you could still drain them a good amount, but again, this brand new commander makes it incredibly easy to drain your opponents very quickly with your massive amount of shrines. So because of that, again, this was a 50 cent or so shrine before that was spoiled, and then with this new commander, its average price is $3.84 with a market price of $3.30. That being said, these M21 shrines had a lot less of a jump than the older shrines. Because now let's take a look at one of the original shrines from the original Kamigawa sets with Honden of Cleansing Fire. It costs 3 to white, and it says at the beginning of your upkeep you gain 2 life for each shrine you control. So yeah, I mean, in comparison to Sanctum of Stone Fangs, that is a more underwhelming effect, but still it can be effective, especially with this new commander, it can gain you a ton of life. That being said, as effective as it is, I did not see the jump for this card being as drastic as it was. Because this card went from being about $2 or so, and now, well, as you can see, it's over 10, or with the market price around 9. So yeah, building a Shrines deck before the brand new Goshintai of Life's origin was definitely a lot more budget, but now it is quite expensive to do so. So yeah, this example can definitely show how a commander that has a certain strategy that might be, either underdeveloped or not have a commander kind of dedicated to it, can definitely make prices jump a ton. Next up though, let's move on to Satoru Umazawa, a 2/4 human ninja for 1 blue-black. Satoru has, whenever you activate a ninjutsu ability, look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand and the rest in the bottom of your library in any order. This ability triggers only once each turn. But the more important part is that second part, each creature card in your hand has ninjutsu for 2 blue-black. So essentially, you return an unblocked attacking creature to your hand, and you put that creature into play for that ninjutsu cost. And again, that can be any creature in your hand now, and yeah, there are some massive creatures that you can cheat into play with this. So because of that, some very interesting cards spiked in price. Now the first card that I want to highlight with this commander is a bit of an interesting one with Silent Blade Oni. It's a 6/5 demon ninja that costs 3 blue, blue, black, black, but it does have ninjutsu for 4 blue and a black. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, look at that player's hand, you may cast a non-land card in it without paying its mana cost. Now again, with this card, you could still save mana with that ninjutsu, but with this new commander coming out, well, you can save even more, essentially reducing that ninjutsu cost by 2 more. So yeah, definitely a powerful effect on a creature that gets even cheaper. And speaking of getting cheaper, well, okay, the exact opposite of that, the pricing on this card actually is very interesting because Satoru Umazawa was actually spoiled quite a bit early by Wizards back at the very end of December. So whereas a lot of the other cards that we're talking about in this episode where their price increases are toward the end of January or early February, this one started all the way back at the beginning of January, end of December. So even though that brand new commander was essentially spoiled well in advance of the actual set coming out, I mean like a month and a half or so, players were still buying this one up in anticipation of that commander coming out. So they were already building their decks ahead of time, which if you bought this way back then, it was around $5 or so, but nowadays it's $18 on average end market. So yeah, this really just goes to show that basically once a commander is spoiled, it can have an immediate impact on the price of a card, and the longer that time goes on, especially when it comes to the actual release of the commander, I mean, look at around February 14th, just after that it jumped even significantly higher. Basically, the price just keeps increasing and increasing. All this essentially is to say, and like I said before, if you are interested in a commander, even if the commander is not going to be out for a while, you might want to start picking up some cards earlier rather than later. That being said, there are other ones that do catch on later. I mean, maybe Silent Blade Oni was a bit more obvious since that one's actually a ninja itself and has ninjutsu, but this one, Mind Leech Mass, was not caught early. It's a 6/6 with trample that costs 5 blue, black, black, and it says, well, let me know if this sounds familiar. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may look at that player's hand. If you do, you may play a non-land card in it without paying that card's mana cost. So basically the exact same as Silent Blade Oni, but even better. Well, okay, maybe just slightly better. Again, this is a 6/6 with trample instead of a 6/5, but yeah, again, even though it does technically have a higher converted mana cost, it is the same cost to ninjutsu it out. Regardless, the price on this one is very interesting, whereas Silent Blade Oni started creeping up ever since December and started getting, more and more expensive, and then also, spiked even more once it hit actual release of Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. This one's price essentially stayed the exact same until, late January. Again, this card was like $1 or so, and then all of a sudden, late January, it started going up and up and up, and obviously started spiking even harder as soon as Kamigawa Neon Dynasty came out. So yeah, if you picked it up for $1 back then, good for you. If not, yeah, the price these days is around $12. One last one that I want to highlight really quick though is actually a card that was already very expensive with Blightsteel Colossus, but this was the very first card that many players thought of when they saw this brand new commander. It's an 11/11 golem that has Trample, Infect, and Indestructible, and it usually costs 12 mana, but again with this commander you can get it out for 4, so that's an 8 mana savings. And yeah, again, to actually get it out, you are going to return an unblocked attacker, which means that this is going to be unblocked as well, so that's basically a one-shot KO. So yeah, there's a reason that this very expensive card was top of mind to many players the second that this commander came out. And its price around the end of December was around like $38 to $45 or so, and yeah, it's just been steadily increasing since Umazawa was spoiled, and yeah, it keeps going up and up and up, and these days, I mean, the average price is $87.99 and the market price is $62.92. So yeah, it just shows that if a card is, that good with certain commanders, some players out there are definitely willing to spend up on it. And yeah, the price of an expensive card like this one can get even more expensive than it previously was because of a new commander. Now, speaking of new commanders, one that has made big waves with a lot of players is Hinata Dawn Crowned. This commander, I have said many times, is pretty broken, and yeah, there's a reason why. It's a 4/4 flying trample Kieran Spear that costs 1 blue, red, white. It says spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each target, and then spells your opponents cast cost 1 more to cast for each target. Basically, the more and more that you look into this commander, the more broken it becomes. Very interesting concept, but you can do some incredible things with certain cards, and certain cards that do incredible things with it are now a lot more expensive. For example, one card that I kept highlighting whenever I talked about this commander was just how powerful Heliod's Intervention is with it. It's an instant for X white white, and it says choose 1, destroy X target artifacts and or enchantments, or target player gains twice X life. Again, since Hinata reduces your cost based on the number of targets, you essentially can just pay whatever you want into that X depending on how many enchantments and artifacts you want to destroy. Basically, this is, you don't pay anything for that X. This is pay white white at instant speed, destroy all of your opponent's artifacts and enchantments. So because of that, this card that was around $2 or $3 or so has now gone all the way up to be about an $8 card. So yeah, I mean, there are some powerful things that you can do with Hinata, and this card is just one of the examples of a card that has spiked in price because of that. Another card that is an example of this is a card that, well, really didn't see basically any play before Hinata. This card was pretty mediocre at best. Reality Spasm is an instant for X blue blue, and it says choose 1, tap X target permanents or untap X target permanents. So yeah, whereas Heliod's Intervention definitely saw play and was a useful card outside of Hinata, this one is very specific and very good in Hinata. Being able to essentially tap everything down that you want to tap down for 2 mana at instant speed, or untap all your permanents including your lands at instant speed, yeah, that's quite good. So because of that, this card that just costs cents, I mean literally like 10 cents or so, is now a $4 or $3 card depending, on where you buy it. Again, with a card such as this that only has 1 printing, even when it's only being used in, very specific decks like, Hinata, when that demand is high enough, its price is going to spike even though it's not used elsewhere. But now let's move on to another very interesting commander that many players out there are excited about with our very first vehicle commander. Well, okay, should I say non-MDFC vehicle commander with Shurikai Genesis Engine. Our very first mech commander, okay? There we go. It's an 8/8 vehicle that costs 2 white blue, and of course it says it can be your commander, and it has pay 1 tap, draw 2 cards, then discard a card. Create a 1/1 colorless pilot creature token with this creature crew's vehicles as though its power were 2 greater, and it's got a crew cost of 8. So being an 8/8 for 4 mana, obviously when this is crewed, it can hit really hard. And though it does have a high crew cost, obviously it can also help make you pilots that can help you crew it. That being said, just even on its face without even being a creature, it is a fantastic draw engine for the right deck. Essentially, drawing you 2, discarding 1 card, you're up 1 card, and you've got great card selection with it. And of course, there are actually ways to abuse this, and because of that, well, certain cards went up in price. First up, a card from my childhood that I want to highlight, Intruder Alarm. This is actually a card that I brought up for Shurikai, and for good reason. It's an enchantment for 2 and a blue, and it says, creatures don't untap during their controller's untap steps. Whenever a creature comes into play, untap all creatures. Yeah, that is incredibly powerful with this commander. So as long as this commander is crewed and it's actually a creature, all you have to do is pay 1 mana, you draw 2, discard 1, you make a 1/1 pilot. That pilot comes into play, Intruder Alarm sees that, and untaps all creatures, including your commander. So you can do that again, and again, and again, and again. Basically, pay 1 mana, draw 2, discard 1, create a 1/1 on repeat. Now, Intruder Alarm is actually one that has an interesting price history when it comes to actually kind of when it started to spike, because the actual jump in the cost of the card didn't really happen until late February. Now, obviously, I cannot know for sure, but my assumption is that many players got their pre-cons around then, and that's when the card started to catch on. And also, just as a note, it looks like the average price of this one is around $32, but the market price is $20 less, which, please correct me below in the comments if I'm wrong on this, but basically, the listings are pretty absurd right now, and many players might not be paying that price, so maybe they're trying to wait for it to come back down in price. But yeah, from what I could find, if you're looking for Intruder Alarm, a lot of places are either sold out of it, or yeah, the price is up in that 30s range. But another card that also jumped thanks to this new commander is Unwinding Clock. It's an artifact for 4 that says untap all artifacts you control during each other player's untap step. So yeah, incredibly effective with this commander in pretty much any artifacts, but yeah, I mean, basically untap your commander on every single turn, and again, you can just keep activating that once per turn then. Not Intruder Alarm levels of broken, but still very effective. Regardless, the price increase for this one saw a very similar trend to Intruder Alarm. Again, the actual jump for the card didn't really come until, late February. This one, though, of course, the gap between the market price and the average price is nowhere near as large. It's around, 80 cents or so players apparently are starting to pay up for this card. But again, if you bought this card when the actual commander was spoiled, you would have paid quite a bit less than that. Now, the next price jump that I want to highlight is actually on a card that can be attributed to 2 commanders from this set, well, should I say the set in the pre-con, with Chishiro the Shattered Blade and Tatsunari Toad Rider. Chishiro the Shattered Blade says whenever an aura or equipment enters the battlefield under your control, create a 2/2 red spirit creature token with menace. And Tatsunari Toad Rider says whenever you cast an enchantment spell, if you don't control a creature named Kaimi, create Kaimi, a legendary 3/3 black and green frog creature token with. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So essentially, each of these commanders benefits you from casting auras. And again, with Shishiro being a Gruul commander and Tatsunari being a Sultai commander, the one color that is, shared by both of them is green, and because of that, a certain card spiked in price. And that card would be Whip Silk, which is an aura for just a green that gives the enchanted creature reach, and it has pay a green, return Whip Silk to its owner's hand. This is a very simple card that I believe I highlighted actually in each episode, one on Chishiro and one on Tatsunari. And again, basically, all you need to do is just keep casting this, bouncing it back to your hand, casting it, bouncing it back to your hand, and you will keep getting more and more benefits from these commanders. So yeah, this is a very simple card that really didn't see too much play elsewhere. I mean, there are definitely certain Enchantress commanders out there that can utilize it, but adding 2 more commanders that can really utilize it into the pool definitely spiked its price. I mean, from the looks of it, is around like a 30 or 40 cent card, maybe, and now, it jumped up all the way up to over $4, and now it seems to be down around 3 or so the price might have actually finally leveled out. But yeah, again, this can just go to show, especially when you've got multiple commanders from a new set that want the same card, how prices can increase. So again, my entire point behind all of this is if you are excited about a brand new commander that might have just gotten spoiled, and you see a card that, might be getting highlighted by some people, or, you see some synergies with a commander that are really going to work well and that you're excited about, you might want to jump on cards sooner rather than later, especially for cards that might be older or might not have, any reprints, etc., etc., etc. So, when you see a new commander that you're excited about during spoiler seasons, make sure you're on the lookout for those. Because again, if you are budget conscious like I am, you very well might save a good chunk of money by getting in on a card early rather than later. And with that, the show has come to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you, so make sure you comment below and let me know what your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, thanks again and have a good one.